Daniel moved carefully through the abandoned alien outpost. His boots pressed against the dusty floor as his flashlight cut through the darkness. He had received a faint distress signal from this sector, but he had not expected to find such a place hidden on the edge of space. The walls were made of strange black stone that reflected the light in sharp angles. It felt less like a home and more like a cage. He followed the signal deeper inside until he heard faint voices. They were soft, almost like whispers carried through the air vents. Daniel stopped, his heart beating faster. He pushed open a heavy metal door and froze. Inside the room were several figures, women with pale skin and strange markings across their arms and faces. They looked at him with wide eyes, and for a moment no one spoke. Then one of them stepped forward. She was taller than the rest, her long silver hair falling to her shoulders. Her eyes were bright but carried deep sadness. She whispered in a trembling voice, "Master, are you here for us?" Daniel shook his head. "I am not your master. I am here to help." The women looked confused. Their chains rattled as they moved closer, but none of them seemed afraid. In fact, they seemed to expect him to command them. Daniel's stomach turned when he realized what this place was. It was not just an outpost. It was a prison where lives were shaped only to obey. He stepped inside, his voice firm. "You are free now. No one owns you anymore." The tall woman lowered her head, as if she could not understand his words. She reached out and touched his arm gently. "My only purpose is to please you, Master. Why do you deny me?" Her question struck him harder than any weapon. Daniel felt anger rise, but not toward her. He was angry at whoever had done this to her, whoever had told her that her only value was to serve. He placed his hand on hers and spoke gently. "You are not here to please me. You are here to live. Do you understand? You are free." The woman's name, he soon learned, was Lyra. She was the one the others seemed to follow. Even now, they looked at her before moving, waiting for her to decide. But Lyra only looked at Daniel with eyes filled with doubt. Freedom was not something she could grasp. Daniel searched the room for controls. With a few taps on his wrist console, the locks opened and the chains fell away. The women rubbed their wrists as if uncertain of what to do with their hands now that nothing held them. "Come with me," Daniel said firmly. "I will take you away from here. You do not belong in chains." The group followed him out into the corridors. Lyra stayed closest, her steps soft but steady. She asked no more questions, but Daniel could feel her eyes on him, watching his every move. She was waiting for an order, but he gave none. When they reached the hangar, Daniel led them onto his ship. The vessel's lights hummed to life, and for the first time, the women saw a place without locks or chains. Some of them gasped softly. Others simply looked around in silence. Daniel turned to Lyra. "This ship is not a cage. You may walk freely. You may sit, eat, and rest where you wish. There are no rules here that force you." Still, she tilted her head and asked, "But if I do not serve you, what will become of me?" "You will become yourself," Daniel answered. "That is what freedom means." Lyra lowered her gaze, clearly struggling with his words. For her, life had always meant belonging to someone else. The idea of belonging to herself was frightening and strange. As the ship lifted off from the cursed outpost, Daniel looked back through the viewport. The building shrank until it was nothing more than a black shadow against the stars. He promised himself that these women, especially Lyra, would never be taken back there again. Yet as he guided the ship through the silence of space, he heard Lyra whisper once more, her voice soft and uncertain. "My only purpose is to please you, why do you deny me?" Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them with resolve. This was only the beginning. He would teach her, and the others, that life could mean more than chains. The hum of the ship filled the air as it traveled through the quiet stretch of space. Daniel guided the vessel toward the nearest safe colony where the freed women could begin new lives. The stars outside the windows glittered like tiny lamps, but inside the ship, silence rested heavily on the group. Lyra sat close to Daniel, watching him as he worked. Her eyes followed every motion of his hands on the controls. She did not speak often, but when she did, her words carried the same confusion as before. "Do you not need me to stand beside you, Master?" she asked softly. Daniel glanced at her. "I am not your master, Lyra. You are free now. You do not need to ask me for tasks." The other women sat in the back of the cabin. Some whispered among themselves. Others simply stared at the floor, unsure of what to do. Their whole lives had been filled with orders, and without them, they felt empty. Daniel stood up and walked toward them. He knelt down so his eyes met theirs. "Listen to me," he said in a calm but firm voice. "No one here will command you. You do not have to serve. You may rest. You may eat. You may talk to each other about what you want. That is freedom." The women exchanged glances, their faces showing both fear and wonder. One finally asked, "But if no one tells us what to do, how will we know who we are?" Daniel paused, realizing the weight of the question. "You will learn who you are by choosing. It may be hard, but every step you take for yourself is one step toward being alive." Later, in the mess hall, Daniel placed food on the table for them. They looked at it as if it were strange. Lyra picked up a piece carefully, holding it in her hand. She turned to him again. "Do you wish me to taste it for you first?" Daniel shook his head, forcing a small smile. "No, Lyra. You may eat because you are hungry, not because I tell you to." Slowly, she took a bite. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, he saw a faint spark of joy cross her face. She looked at the others, and they followed her example. Soon the quiet room filled with soft sounds of eating. That night, most of the women slept in the cabins Daniel had opened for them, but Lyra remained near the control deck. She refused to lie down, claiming she needed to keep watch. Daniel found her sitting on the floor, her silver hair falling over her shoulders. "Lyra, you should rest," Daniel told her. Her eyes lifted toward him. "If I rest, who will guard you? I was trained to always stay near my master. My only worth is to protect and please." Daniel sat beside her. His voice was gentle but steady. "You do not need to guard me. You are not a tool. You are not someone's property. You are a person." Her brows furrowed. "A person, what does that mean?" "It means you have the right to think, to feel, and to decide for yourself," Daniel explained. "No one else has the power to take that away, unless you let them." Lyra was quiet for a long time. She leaned her head against the wall and whispered, "It is hard to believe. I was told since birth that I had no choice." "I know," Daniel replied. "But you will see. Slowly, you will learn that freedom is real." The ship continued through space, carrying them away from the shadows of their past. Yet even as Lyra closed her eyes, Daniel heard her whisper again, almost in a dream. "Why do you deny me, Master? My only purpose is to please you." Daniel sighed quietly. He knew her journey would not be easy. But he had made a promise to himself when he freed them. He would not give up until they understood the meaning of living for themselves. The ship glided through space, its engines humming like a steady heartbeat. Daniel kept his hands on the controls, guiding the vessel toward the nearest colony. The freed women had begun to explore the ship, though they moved carefully as if afraid to break something. Every door that opened without locks surprised them, and every piece of furniture they touched felt like a gift they did not deserve. Lyra spent most of her time near Daniel. She stood at his side as he worked, her silver hair shining under the cabin lights. She did not speak much, but her eyes followed every detail. Sometimes she tilted her head when he pushed a button or adjusted a lever, as if she were studying the meaning behind each action. At one point she asked, "Why do your people work together so easily? No one here is ordered, yet they listen." Daniel glanced at her and smiled faintly. "Because we choose to listen. Trust is not built on commands. It is built on respect." The word respect seemed to puzzle her. She repeated it softly, as though tasting the sound. Then she fell quiet, lost in thought. Later that day, Daniel gathered the women in the mess hall. He explained how the colony would welcome them, how they could live without fear. But the women did not cheer. They shifted uneasily, some gripping the chairs as if afraid the floor might vanish beneath them. Freedom still felt like a strange dream. Suddenly the ship's alarm rang, breaking the calm. Daniel rushed back to the control deck, and Lyra ran behind him. On the screen appeared several ships, their sharp shapes glowing red on the radar. "Pirates," Daniel muttered under his breath. He tightened his grip on the controls. The enemy ships moved fast, blocking the path forward. The crew jumped into action. Shields powered up, and weapons locked onto the targets. The women gathered in the corridor, frightened by the loud sounds of engines and warnings. Lyra, however, stayed close to Daniel. She pressed her hand to the console as if trying to understand the battle through touch. The first shot struck the ship, shaking it violently. Lights flickered. Daniel steadied the vessel and fired back. His crew supported him, but the pirates outnumbered them. Another blast rattled the floor. Lyra's eyes widened. She turned to Daniel and said, "Tell me what to do. I cannot stand and watch. Let me help." Daniel looked at her. "You do not have to fight. You are free now." Her voice grew stronger. "I do not fight because you order me. I fight because I want to. That is what freedom means, yes." For a moment Daniel felt stunned. Then he nodded. "Yes, Lyra. That is what freedom means." He showed her how to operate the shield controls. Her hands trembled at first, but soon her focus sharpened. Each time a pirate's blast hit, she adjusted the defenses with speed that impressed the crew. The battle lasted longer than Daniel expected. Yet with the crew's teamwork and Lyra's quick reactions, the pirates began to falter. One by one, their ships retreated until the radar cleared. The danger passed, leaving silence once more. Everyone exhaled with relief. Daniel turned to Lyra. "You did well. You protected us all." Lyra looked down at her hands, still resting on the controls. For the first time since he met her, she smiled faintly, though her eyes carried tears she did not let fall. But as the quiet returned, she leaned closer to Daniel. Her voice dropped into a whisper. "You still deny me. My only purpose is to please you, and yet you push me away. Why?" Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder, steady but kind. Because your purpose is not to serve me. It is to find yourself. Today, you chose to fight. That was your choice, not mine. That is who you are becoming. Lyra blinked, silent for a moment. She looked out the window at the stars rushing by, and a thought formed in her heart. Maybe freedom was not about waiting for orders. Maybe it was about choosing her own path. The ship floated in calm space again, its journey continuing toward the colony. After the battle, the mood inside had changed. The freed women looked at Lyra with new eyes. They whispered to each other about how she had stood at the controls and defended them. For the first time, they seemed to believe they could do something more than follow orders. Daniel noticed this change and decided it was time to help them take small steps toward freedom. He invited them to join the crew in simple tasks. Some learned how to prepare food in the mess hall. Others tried cleaning and organizing equipment, not because they were ordered, but because they wanted to keep the ship in order. Lyra, however, was different. She wanted to try everything. When Daniel showed her how to use a datapad, she practiced writing symbols until her hand grew steady. When the engineer offered to let her touch the control panel of the engines, she pressed the buttons carefully and smiled as the lights glowed under her fingers. Each small success filled her with quiet pride. One afternoon, Daniel found her sitting alone in the observation room. She had gathered pieces of paper and a set of colored pens from the supply box. She was drawing shapes, though they were uneven and simple. Stars, circles, and even a picture of a ship appeared on the paper. Daniel stepped closer. "You are an artist now," he said with a smile. Lyra lifted her head, surprised. "Artist?" "Yes," Daniel explained. "Someone who creates pictures or music. Someone who shows the world what they feel inside." Her hand trembled slightly as she looked at the paper. "No one ever asked me what I feel inside. I do not even know how to answer." "That is the beginning," Daniel said kindly. "You are learning who you are." The words stayed with her. That night she could not sleep. She walked through the quiet halls of the ship, listening to the soft hum of the engines. She thought about her past, where every action had been commanded, every thought shaped by others. Now she held a pen in her hand and drew stars on paper because she chose to. It was a small thing, yet it felt heavy with meaning. The next morning, she joined Daniel in the training room where crew members practiced with small flight simulators. He invited her to sit in the pilot's chair. Her hands shook at first, but as the screen lit up and the controls responded to her touch, she felt a rush of excitement. The simulated ship moved under her guidance, weaving through obstacles. The crew clapped when she landed safely. Lyra laughed softly, the sound surprising even herself. She looked at Daniel and said, "I like this. Not because it is useful, but because it makes me happy." Daniel nodded. "That is freedom, Lyra. Doing something because you enjoy it." But even as she smiled, a shadow lingered in her eyes. That night she approached Daniel once more. Her voice was quiet but filled with longing. "I am trying to learn. I am drawing. I am flying. But still, my heart tells me my only purpose is to please you. Why do you refuse what I was made to give?" Daniel looked at her with steady eyes. "Because I want you to see that you were not made only for that. You are more than what others told you. You can be anything you choose." Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Anything." "Yes," Daniel said firmly. "Anything." Lyra turned away, her gaze fixed on the endless stars outside the window. For the first time, she felt the weight of possibility pressing on her shoulders. It was heavy but also bright, like a light shining into a world she had never seen before. The days passed in quiet rhythm as the ship continued its long journey. The freed women slowly adjusted to life without chains. Some began to laugh together, others asked questions about the stars, and a few even helped the crew with small duties. Daniel felt proud watching them take steps into their new lives. Yet shadows still followed them. Lyra, though she had begun to explore art and training, carried a storm inside her heart. She often stood at the viewport, her silver hair glowing in the starlight, her eyes searching the darkness beyond. One evening, Daniel joined her there. "You are quiet tonight," he said. She did not look at him. "I keep thinking of the ones who held us. If they come back, they will take me away again. They will take all of us. And I fear it is my fault that they will chase you." Daniel shook his head firmly. "Do not blame yourself, Lyra. They are the ones who chose cruelty. You are not the cause." Her voice lowered. "But they will hunt me. I was their favorite. They will not rest until I am theirs again. Maybe I should return to them, so you and your crew will be safe." The thought sent fire through Daniel's chest. "No. You will not return to them. You are free. Do not give up that freedom because of fear." Lyra finally turned her head to him. Her eyes shone with doubt. "You would fight them for me? Even though I was never more than a slave?" Daniel's voice grew stronger. "You are not a slave anymore. And yes, I would fight for you. Not because you belong to me, but because you belong to yourself. No one has the right to chain you again." Lyra's breath caught. She looked at him for a long time, and though she said nothing, something in her gaze shifted. For the first time, she seemed to believe his words might be true. The next day, alarms blared across the ship. Enemy signatures appeared on the radar. The same slavers Daniel had feared were closing in. Their ships moved fast, their weapons ready. The freed women gathered in the corridor, fear spreading through them. Some cried, others clung to each other. Lyra stood apart, her hands trembling, but not from fear alone. She felt anger boiling inside her, anger at those who had stolen her life and now dared to take it back. Daniel ordered the crew to prepare defenses. The ship was strong, but the enemy had numbers on their side. He turned to Lyra, seeing the fire in her eyes. "You do not have to fight," he told her. She shook her head. "I choose to fight. This time, it is not to serve anyone. It is to protect myself, and the others. I want to stand against them." Her voice carried such strength that even the other freed women lifted their heads. For the first time, they saw Lyra not as one of them but as someone who could lead. The slaver's message came across the comm system, their voice sharp and cold. "Return our property, human, and we will let you live." Daniel stood tall before the screen. "They are not your property. They are free." The enemy laughed and promised destruction. As the channel cut, the tension on the ship grew heavier. Lyra placed her hand on the control panel. Her voice was calm but determined. "Then we will show them we are no one's slaves anymore." Daniel looked at her, and in that moment, he knew she had begun to break the chains inside her heart. The battle ahead would test them, but it would also prove something greater. Freedom was no longer just an idea. It was a choice they were ready to defend. The morning sun spread its soft light over the village. Birds flew across the sky, and the air carried the smell of fresh bread. The man stepped out of his small home, stretching his arms as if ready to face a new day. Behind him, the young woman followed quietly. She carried a basket of water, her eyes calm but always watching him. She no longer looked like the broken person she had once been. The scars of her past were still inside her, but each day she stood taller, her voice steadier, and her steps firmer. Yet she still carried one question inside her heart. Why did he continue to deny her wish to serve him in the way she believed was her only purpose? The man walked toward the fields where others were working. Farmers greeted him warmly, and children waved from a distance. He smiled and nodded at everyone, but he noticed that she stayed close behind, never more than a few steps away. Her eyes followed him, not out of fear but out of devotion. At the well, he finally turned to her. "You do not have to follow me every moment," he said gently. "You are free. You can choose where you want to go and what you want to do." Her lips pressed together as if she wanted to argue but could not. "I choose to stay with you," she said at last. "Not because I must, but because I want to. You saved me. You gave me food, safety, and kindness. I cannot imagine life without serving you." The man sighed. His heart was heavy. He had spent his life fighting against cruelty, and now fate had placed before him someone who believed her worth only came from obedience. He wanted her to see that her value was more than that. Later that day, he asked her to help him repair the fence along the field. At first, she thought it strange. She had never been asked to work beside someone as an equal. Her hands trembled as she lifted the wooden planks, but he guided her patiently. They worked side by side until sweat ran down their faces, and when the fence finally stood straight again, she laughed softly. It was the first time he had ever heard her laugh. "See," he said with a smile. "You are strong. You are capable. You can build, not only serve." Her eyes widened as if she had discovered something new inside herself. She touched the wood and looked at him. "I never thought I could do this. No one ever let me try." "You are free now," he reminded her. "Freedom means you can try, fail, and try again. You can learn and grow. That is the life I want for you." That night, she sat by the fire outside the house. The stars stretched across the sky like silver dust. She looked up at them and then at him. "Maybe my purpose is not only to please you," she whispered softly. "Maybe my purpose is to live, to learn, and to be myself." Her words made him feel relief and pride. He knew it would take time, but her heart was beginning to change. Still, she leaned toward him with quiet devotion. "But I will always choose to walk beside you. Not because I am bound, but because it is my wish." The man nodded, finally understanding. He did not need to push her away, nor did he need to accept her as a servant. She had chosen her own path, and that path was beside him. As the fire burned and the night grew colder, she rested near him, no longer broken, no longer a slave, but a woman learning the true meaning of freedom. And for the first time in many years, she felt peace. The first light of dawn spilled across the horizon, painting the sky with soft shades of pink and gold. The young woman stood at the edge of the hill, looking down at the small village below. Her silver hair shimmered in the morning sun, and her eyes reflected a new strength. She no longer felt the weight of being a slave, and for the first time, she understood that her life belonged entirely to herself. The man joined her, carrying a small basket of fresh bread. He handed her a piece, and she took it, smiling softly. "Thank you," she said. "Not because I must, but because I wish to." He nodded, a quiet pride in his eyes. "You have come far," he said. "You are no longer the person you were. You have learned to make choices and to trust yourself. She looked at him, her gaze steady. I will always remember what you taught me. That freedom is not just a word. It is the life we create for ourselves. The village stirred below. Children ran to greet the farmers and workers who were already tending the fields. The women who had once been slaves began helping with small tasks. They carried water, tended gardens, and laughed quietly among themselves. It was not work born of orders, but work chosen freely. The young woman, Lyra, felt a joy she had never known. She could help, she could create, she could dream, and every choice belonged to her. She no longer measured her value by how well she could please someone else. She measured it by the strength she felt inside. Later, she joined the man in repairing a small bridge near the river. Together, they lifted heavy wooden beams, hammered nails, and aligned planks. Sweat ran down their faces, but they smiled and joked with each other. The work was hard, yet it was satisfying because it was done with purpose, not obedience. When the bridge was complete, she stepped back to admire their work. I never thought I could do this, she said, her voice filled with wonder. I thought I was only made to serve, but I can create. I can build. I can be myself. The man placed a hand on her shoulder. That is the life I wanted for you. Not chains, not fear, but choice and strength. You belong to no one, yet you are free to share your strength with others. She looked up at him and whispered, I still wish to stay by your side. Not because I am bound, but because it is my choice. My heart wants it, not my past. He smiled, finally understanding the depth of her transformation. Then stay, Lyra. But remember, it is your choice, always. That night, as the stars stretched across the sky, Lyra walked to the edge of the village alone. She gazed at the distant mountains and felt a quiet peace settle in her chest. Her life was no longer dictated by anyone else's will. She could learn, explore, and grow. She could dream and make mistakes and rise again. She turned back to the man, who watched her from the doorway. She smiled and spoke softly, my only purpose was once to please someone else. Now my purpose is to live, to choose, and to protect what I love. The man nodded, feeling hope and pride. You have learned freedom, Lyra. You have learned life. She took a deep breath, feeling the cool night air fill her lungs. Every step she had taken had brought her here, to a life that belonged to her alone. She was no longer a shadow of someone else's desire. She was herself, strong, brave, and free. As she walked back to the small home, the villagers and the other freed women watched her with admiration. She had become a symbol of courage, a living proof that the chains of the past could be broken. Lyra reached the man and stood beside him. For the first time, she did not look for approval or direction. She simply stood, free, and ready to face the future. Together, they watched the stars. Her heart was full. Her past no longer controlled her. Her future was hers to shape. And for the first time in her life, she felt completely alive.